Om. 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 Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayanena Swayam Vyasena Kratitam Purana Munina Madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Vridavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Ambatvam Anusandathami Bhagavad Gita Bhavatveshinim Namostu te Vyasa Vishala Buddhe Fullara Vindayata Patra Netra Yena Tvaya Bharata Taila Purnaha Prajvalito Jnanamayah Pradipaha Prapanna Parijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetam Vridaduhe Namaha. Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyaha Mokshayishyami Ma Shuchaha. So welcome everyone to this next session of our chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita. Today in our reflection time, we are going to look at essentially what was covered last week. Don't worry, I'm not made it too complicated, but let us see what we can get here. So what is the word, either English or Sanskrit, for what we called as real in this shloka, na sato vidyate bhavaha na bhavo vidyate sataha, that shloka. So I want to hear, what do you think? It can be in English or it can be in Sanskrit.
Satah.
Satah, very good, excellent. That is the first one. That is the na sato vidyate bhavaha, right?
Yeah.
Anything in English you can think about? You can think about all the names that is typically used for discussing consciousness. What about infinite? Any other qualifications you can see how to describe that consciousness? So infinite is one. And what else comes to your mind?
Can it be truth?
Truth, yeah, truth, very good. Truth is also another word. Yes, very good.
That is tat, right?
Tat, yes, tat is also very good. Excellent. I have one more, which is changeless. You know, I just put a few things, but those are very good. Tat, truth, infinite, changeless, anything?
Avinashi.
Avinashi, wow, very nice. I wonder why Meenu says Avinashi.
Existence.
Existence, yes.
Aprameya.
Oh, aprameya, excellent. Yes, aprameya is very good. Those are all lakshanas, and these are also lakshanas. Excellent. Very good.
Sattvastu nitya.
Sattva, nitya, very good. Yeah, those are all Actually, you're almost coming into my next questions, actually. So on the same lines as what is real, now let's talk about what is the unreal, okay? So what is the word for unreal in that same shloka number 16?
Nasato.
It is
Nasato.
correct. It is asat. Actually, that shloka has na asat. So you're very, very close. Na asat. Yes. So asat. And if we called something as infinite, what do you think this would be?
Finite.
Finite, exactly. So this is finite.
Mithya.
Anitya.
Mithya. Mithya.
Oh, mithya. Yes,
Yeah.
mithya. Yes, mithya is very good. Yeah. And then the other one, because we said it is changeless, this is constantly changing. And then anything else comes to your mind?
Nabhavo.
Abhava. So abhava is the non-existence. You're right. So this is non-existent. Exactly. So another one, I just put it up here in a simple fashion, is limited, because we said real is unlimited. So this is limited. But amazing, you were able to come up with much more deeper words than what I had in this quiz. Okay, now we have the modifications of the body. If you remember, what are the modifications we talked about?
Body, yeah.
Of the body, yeah. So since body is that asat vastu, right?
Asti, yeah.
Asti, exactly. Very good.
Jagat.
Jayate.
Jayate is birth, yeah.
Birth, exactly. Jayate is birth. So asti is that state where, you know, the it's not even, it's even before the fetus. So it is just in the form of existence in the mother's womb. Okay, so that is the state of existence. Next is jayate, and then
Vardate.
Vardate. Correct. Vardate or growth. So once the baby is born, it goes through the growth stages, and then next is viparinamate. Viparinamate.
Viparinamate.
Yeah. So parinama means to change.
Oh, parinama. Yeah.
Correct. So parinama, so you can associate with that. Viparinamate. Yes.
Viparinamate.
Yeah. And then we have decay.
Apakshiyate.
Apakshiyate. Yeah. Apakshiyate. Yeah. So that is to decay. You know, once it has growth, it changes, then it is on its downward slope, you know, decay. And the last one is
Vinashyate.
Vinashyati, actually, Vinashyati or death. Very good, very good. So these, you know, these are, I wanted to put this even in the form of like a reflection, you know, so even as I'm thinking about this, we can think about how the body, which is changing all the time, and because it's changing, therefore, this is not a permanent thing, and it is temporary, and it is not the real thing. So in that sense, I wanted to put this up. Okay, now we have the characteristics of Atma or self, of consciousness. And I think you already said a few of them, which was Prameya, Nitya, right?
Yeah, Nitya, Satsvarupa. Yeah.
Satsvarupa, very good. And then?
Sarvagata.
Sarvagata, excellent, which is all pervading, all pervading. And then you said Aprameya. Very good. Aprameya, which is, does anybody remember what Aprameya means?
You cannot comprehend.
Atma.
You cannot comprehend. Also, it is not, you're right, Meenu, it is not comprehend in the sense of the object. So it only objects are things which is outside us, we can comprehend, right? Like, for example, this pen is Prameya. So aprameya is, since it is a subject itself, right? And then we had akarta. Akarta indicating that it is a non-doer. Karta indicates a doer and akarta indicates a non-doer. And then along with akarta, what comes with that?
Abhakta.
Abhokta. Yeah.
Abhokta.
Abhokta. So bhoga means enjoyments, right? Bhoga, we say various bhogas, they're enjoyments. So a bhokta is an enjoyer, but the Atma is a non-enjoyer. Okay. And one more we saw, which is
Nirvikar.
Nirvikaraha. Correct.
Nirvikaraha.
Yeah, Nirvikaraha. So vikara means modification. And nir is the opposite. So nirvikaraha, or actually it's not the opposite. It is no modifications. Nir means actually zero or low. It is an upasarga, which is added to the verb. So here nirvikaraha. So therefore it is without any modifications. Correct. Very good. So I just wanted to use this as a kind of a review of what we did from last time. So far we have looked at how the second chapter began with Arjuna having this great problem and the confusion with regard to really what he should be doing. And then Krishna is trying to tell him that his confusion with regard to his duty is actually more in relation to his identity. If you recall, I mean, this problem that he was looking at was such a humongous problem where this huge army he had to face, and therefore Krishna had to come up with a kind of a solution which can jolt him. So in that sense, he literally had to tell Arjuna, hey Arjuna, you're looking at it from a very limited sense of who you are, but in that sense, you are actually much bigger than that. You actually have a problem with a mistaken identity. And you're taking yourself to be the karta. You're taking yourself to be the bhokta. And you're taking yourself to be the jiva. So now you have to think about how you're beyond this. And Krishna tells him, one moment, I just want to mention, Sridharji, I think somebody is not muted. I don't know who is not muted. Okay, yeah.
I fixed it.
Yeah, good, thank you. So because of that, because he's a jiva, doer, and an enjoyer, Arjuna was first of all taking this role of the jiva. Then he was superimposing upon himself all these roles of the fact that he was his brother and he was this disciple of Bhishma and Drona and everything. But he can't really afford to do any of those things when he's in the battlefield. So for that reason, you see Krishna giving him all these arguments now from a very high level. So we saw 16, which we reviewed just now. Then in Shloka 17, Avinashi tu tadvidhi, we found that having explained that this is the identity of Arjuna, which is the level of Atma, now the question comes to what is the characteristic of that Atma. So in Shloka 17, we saw about how that Atma is Avinashi, it is Sarvagata, all pervading, and it is Sat. And then in Shloka 18, we saw the opposite of what that Sat is, and that is what Arjuna was taking himself to be, and that is the bodies. So once having explained that Asat aspect, that Arjuna was looking at this as bodies, then we had Krishna wanting to explain to him that all these bodies are vinashi. All these upadhis are vinashi, and they also have antavanta. They have all an end, whereas Sat has no end. So that was necessary for Arjuna to recognize, because the one primary thing that Arjuna was looking at that time was the fact that he was going to have to kill all of them. So for that reason, Krishna had to tell him that these bodies have an end by themselves and they are in their own journey. So therefore, he doesn't have to worry about it. Whereas that Sat is Nitya, it is Aprameya, it is Anashi, etc. Right? So with that having said, Arjuna, we saw, was giving reality to about 4 different examples we saw last time. One of them was this dream state versus waking state. We established the fact that in these practical examples, because with the question that Menaka asked, which was such a good one, is how do I really translate this knowledge into our real life? So we saw that in comparison to the waking state, the dream state is the temporary state or the unreal state. Actually, it's the unreal state. Then we saw that in comparison with the clay, all these 4 pots, they have nama rupa, names and forms, and therefore the names and forms are really the unreal aspect. The names and forms are unreal, and therefore the real thing is the clay. Then we also saw the example of the ornaments and the gold itself, how the gold is the real thing in the midst of all these ornaments, like the chain, the bangles, and the earring. And then finally, we saw between the waves and the ocean is the permanent reality when compared to the waves which come and go. So all this we saw. And the reason for seeing this is trying to bring home to our own selves this aspect that if I know something is temporary and changing, we can tell ourselves that anytime when I go through some kind of a grief, some kind of a frustration, that this too shall pass away. That is at one level of understanding, but taking that to a higher level of understanding, as I come to recognize that aspect which is the permanent, then I find that anything and everything that I was feeling frustrated about was really unreal, because it was just born out of my own samskaras that I was giving reality. And those samskaras or vasanas themselves are not real. So from that point, I can come to have a good conclusion on facing the world. So that is what Arjuna was being given as a lesson, and from him, we too. So in that sense, we may sometimes be wondering that this real and unreal sounds way too deep. And I really want to understand and focus on the fact that I want to bring it more closer to me. So how do I do that? So here in this shloka as an extension, Antavanta ime dehaha, nityas yokta sharirinaha, anashino aprameyasya tasmad yudhyasva bharata. We can say that anytime my attention goes to my body, for example, and anything related to my body, which is all my attachments due to my attachment of this body with the objects, the relationships, which I have established because of my likes and dislikes. Now, all those things I have to pay some attention to recognize what they are. For example, if my neighbor who lives 10 houses down the road and who has a cute little puppy and who's barking, now does that bother me? No, not really. But suppose my immediate neighbor who has this huge dog and who's constantly barking in the night, wouldn't I be bothered by it? Yes. I would have some kind of a frustration or a dislike for that dog because he's bothering me. So you see how the likes and the dislikes are the reason why we attach a reality to the situations. If I get to a state of understanding those likes and dislikes and seeing how I can have control over it, to that extent, my attention on the real and the unreal becomes a little more clearer, and I can have a handle on it. So that is one aspect of the shloka we talked about. But the other aspect is, therefore fight, O Bharata, referring to Arjuna. Krishna is saying that the bodies are temporary. Yes, the bodies are made of the 5 elements. They are going to go back to earth, and the supreme reality is never going to be affected. So does that mean that, hey, Bharata, you can do whatever you want? No. Here, he is trying to basically tell him that that being the case, Arjuna, do your duty. Do your duty and don't worry about the fact that you're killing somebody. So that is the attention which we had for this particular Tasmat Yudhyasva Bharata. Now, then the question came is, in this shloka of 29, who is really the killer then? Is Atma the killer then? So the shloka is trying to say that, no, ya enam veti hantaram, yaschainam manyate hatam, ubhau tau na vijanitaha, na ayam hanti, na ayam hanti, na hanyate. So anyone who really thinks about the Atma as a killer, or the one who thinks it is being killed, that means anyone who thinks that Atma is to be the doer of that action, or whether Atma is even an object of that action, both of them don't know, because the truth is, Nayam Hanti na Hanyate. The truth is, neither does it become anything of a killer, nor does it become any object. It is actually a Vikriyaha. It is free of any kind of modification. And this is, we will see this also in a Kathopanishad shloka. Today I have put the 2 shlokas of 19 and 20 along with the Kathopanishad, and you will see the comparison between how sage Vyasa has actually used the shlokas of Kathopanishad to bring this beautiful point of the Atma being not killer at all. So next we saw in the shloka, and that is in shloka number 20, which we saw sort of briefly and which we will go into a little more detail, because this is the start for the discussion of the rebirth, which I really want to get into detail today. So in shloka 20, we see Sri Krishna is telling Arjuna, say, Arjuna, if you are thinking that, that you are destroying again the people, let me tell you, even if you want to destroy them, you cannot do so. So even if you think you're destroying, even if you want to destroy, or you're feeling guilty that you're destroying, there is never, you can ever destroy that Atma, because that Atma is the only permanent thing. The unreal is never permanent. So whatever you might be killing is the unreal aspect of it. So taking this at the highest level, now we see that at the highest level of plurality, there is really no killing or giving life. All this is just happening in the realm of change, which is driven by this aspect of time and space. But from the infinite standpoint, really there is no, everything is the same, and the changes happen more in the realm of the time and space. And later, when we get into more deeper concepts of Maya, we will discuss this more in detail about that. So this is a shloka, we looked at it again. Najayate imriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va na bhuyaha ajo nitya shashvato ayam puranaha na hanyate hanyamane sharire. So the first statement is saying that that Atma, which is permanent, which is real, it is never born and it never dies. And the second sentence is saying that it is not that having been there, it ceases to exist again. So what does that mean? That means that existence concept, the existence aspect of anything is always there. That never dies and that never is born. So we are talking about that absolute Atma Tattvam, which na jayate, which is not born at any time. Kadachit, at any time, it is not born. And kadachit na mriyate. It is never ever that it dies. So that aspect of it is something to be kept in mind. And in Vedanta, there's a beautiful term which is prag bhava and pradvamsa bhava. Something that is existence which was there before it was born, prag bhava, and that existence continues to be there after the death too. So pradvamsa bhava. So both of them is the aspect which continues. Existence continues, but Atma by itself will never stop dying, or Atma is never really born itself. And then after that, so we talked about the different aspects here, which is ajaha, nityaha, shashvataha, shashvatoyam. Ajaha meaning that it is unborn. And then when it is unborn, that means it is janma nisheda. So it doesn't have aspect of janma at all. Nityaha, indicating it is eternal. So which means that it doesn't have the aspect of death. So marana nisheda is not there. And then shashvataha, indicating that it is free of any modification. So we had this aspect of apakshiyate, correct? So it is apakshayaha rahitaha. So it is free of any modifications. And another modification that we talked about before is the growth, right? So that aspect of growth is negated by the word puranaha. Now, I know you're going to say puranaha means ancient, isn't it? So how can that be? How can we look at that in terms of growth? So for that, actually, I wanted to spend a little time here. What do we mean by puranaha? Puranaha, the Sanskrit etymology for this is pura api navaha puranaha. Pura api navaha puranaha, meaning that which is very ancient is at the same time fresh and novel every single day. So Atman, which is ancient, but it is also fresh. And we, on the other hand, when we look at something which is navaha or new, we look at actually on just simple examples is, if I do my hair a little differently to give a new look, or in the case of men, for example, if growing a beard gives you a new look, or a mustache gives a new look, or for the women, it's either hairstyles or different clothings or anything just to give a new look. All those are much, much more temporary compared to the word that is used for Atman, which is Puranaha, in this indicating that it is fresh all the time. That is the Puranaha that we are talking about as a qualification for Atma. It is not about making an old thing look new, but it is new all the time. And that is again because in the case of Atma, there is nothing to change. It is constantly the same all the time. Now, this other aspect which comes out beautifully in the shloka of Najayate is this aspect of that Atma is actually beyond time. And thus caught on this one, and he sent a nice note about how whether Atma is also beyond any energy, because we are so used to thinking about the different laws of physics that energy can be, is never created nor destroyed and everything. So is Atma like that also? Well, Atma is even beyond energy. It is reason why it is beyond energy is it is not conditioned by any time. Time is actually an object of consciousness. Time exists in consciousness. And but this one is beyond consciousness. And that is why there is no previous birth to it. and there is no death also. Time and space are in this world of relativity, and in this world of relativity, which is governed by the laws of the theory of relativity, for example, which Einstein is given out. So you would call this as an Einsteinian world of time and space. In that state, Atma is even beyond that, because there is nothing for it to be changed. Any change that can happen is only conditioned by time. And so from that point, this is the destiny of time, or anything belonging to time does not belong to Atma at all. So, so in that sense, it is way beyond this, way beyond time. It is timeless. And since it is timeless, another word that is used for this one is Sanatana. Sanatana, which is which in the same lines of Purana, is that it is that which is absolutely perfect without any modification, and which is one which doesn't belong to any of this criteria of these objects, space, situations that we are used to. So then the meaning of the shloka now, the conclusion from this is that Krishna is telling Arjuna that ultimately, hey Arjuna, at the highest level, you are that Atma. Your nature is that Atma. And you are not this Bhokta, Karta. And the only reason why you're going through all this is because of your own vasanas, your own samskaras, which is making you think of that you're under grief. And those same things are making you deluded to recognize who you are. And all that together is causing your own damage, in the sense that you have all this pity for yourself. And in that misplaced pity, you also have so much amount of nervousness. And all this is your own doing. Now take a grip and recognize this Atma Tattva. And if you do that, you'll recognize that you are that Chit, and that Chit cannot be born, and that Chit cannot be born from anything which is Jada Vastu, anything which is inert matter, because apart from that Chit, everything else is inert, but you are that absolute reality, Atma. So with this, he concludes this shloka here. And now I have these two shlokas, which is, now you can see the shloka number 19 on the Bhagavad Gita, which is Ya enam veti hantaram, yaschenam manyate hatam. It corresponds to this hanta, the shloka from Kathopanishad here. I have the number here also, 1 to 19. And in the next one, I have the same Najayate mriyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va nabhuyaha is from the connection to Kathopanishad. This Najayate mriyate va vipaschit nayam kutaschit bhabuva kaschit ajo nitya shashvato yam puranaha na hanyate hanyamane sharire. The last two lines are similar, but the first two lines are a little different. So this is just a reference to show how Bhagavad Gita, being the essence of Upanishads, you will see a lot of these comparisons. And as and when it is applicable, I will bring these quotations from various Upanishads to show the comparisons between Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads. Now moving on to the shloka 21, which is setting the stage again. Veda vinashinam nityam ya enam ajam avyayam katham sapurushav partha saghatayati hantikam. So again, Krishna is telling Arjuna, now Veda avinashinam nityam yaha. So yaha, any person who knows, who Veda, here Veda basically means the one who knows. Veda in the sense of janati, so that is how with meaning to know, but here the word Veda is not as a noun, but as to know. What does he know? This enam indicating this Atmanam, the one who knows this Atma as Ajam, Avyayam indicating that it is immutable, Avinashi indicating the deathless, etc. Once somebody knows this, now the one who knows this Atma as unborn, imperishable, etc., and he knows that, once he knows that it is that, then katham sa purusham ghātayati, how will he even kill? Because he recognizes now the nature of Atma itself. So there is no way that such a person will kill anything or be killed, so he does not become the doer of action or any prompter of action even. So there is no reason to even ask this question, is what Krishna is trying to tell Arjuna. So it's like this, a mom basically tells a child, how many times have I told you not to make this noise? And the child very innocently says, Mom, you told me only 10 times. So it's not as if the mom is really asking the child, the question. All she's doing is that she's trying to give him, tell, kind of stating a fact here, right? So to hear, it's not that Krishna is asking Arjuna, how can that man be a cause to slay him or be slain by him? All he's trying to say is that, well, such a person will never really, will take himself to be the killer once he recognizes that he's the Atma. So it's just a reiteration of the point made earlier, but more to say that recognize, Partha, that this self is unborn and inexorable, that itself you are. So wake up. So he's trying to say this. So again, Krishna is saying this because if you remember, Arjuna was really worried that he was going to be killing all the kings and everyone and worrying about the magnitude of the war. So Krishna is again reminding Arjuna about that, not to worry about that aspect, because at the level of Atma, nobody is killing anybody. So Atma is really avikriyaha. So having said this, if Arjuna was going to worry about the fact that, okay, even if he's not killing, what is that aspect of a person? What is that aspect which is really moving from one aspect to another? Because even at this point, Arjuna was not able to really kind of understand why Krishna is talking about somebody who is deathless or somebody who is birthless. There was a kind of a gap in Arjuna in the understanding. He's trying to think, okay, you're telling me that Atma is deathless, Atma is birthless, and Atma is at highest state of consciousness. But from where I am right now, I'm actually seeing all these things that can happen. I know that my uncles are going to die, my cousins are going to die, my teachers are going to die. Okay, I get it. But can you tell me a little more on really who is really then dying? You told me the Atma is not dying. Okay, that's fine. Tell me who is it who's dying? That's the part which is being addressed by this shloka, because as we said, Atma is avikriya. Atma is not undergoing any modifications. Atma neither undergoes modifications within himself, with all the 6 modifications we talked about. And Atma is also not undergoing modifications on going from one body to another. So who is really doing that? So this is a classic shloka, very famous. In fact, many of these, Najayate Mriyate is a famous shloka. Nasato Vidyate was a very important shloka, and Avinashi tu tad Vidhi was an important shloka. But this one is probably one of the most important shlokas in this section on the discussion of Atma. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya, Navani ghrannati naroparani, Navani ghrannati naroparani, Tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani, Tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani, Anyani sanyati navani dehi, Anyani sanyati navani dehi. So the shloka is the word-to-word meaning. Here you see, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya. Just like old worn-out clothes, when they're cast off and new clothes are taken up, so too human bodies give up their bodies and take up other bodies. Yatha, that is just like the naraha, the person. Jirnani vasamsi vihaya. Vihaya, that is giving up. What is he giving up? He's giving up vasamsi. Vasamsi is actually the plural of, I have to think about, but it's a plural. I'll probably get back to you on this exact, thing here. But on the noun, so vasamsi is a plural for clothes, and jirnani indicating those worn out clothes. So he takes up navani grinati, he takes up navani, new clothes, in the same way, tatha, in the same way. Who is that? It is the jivatma. So jivatma is the one who gives up the old body and takes up the new body. So in a sense, now we have three entities. We have the Atma, and then we have this physical body, which is just made of all these 5 elements and many of the elements of the chemistry periodic table. That's the second aspect. But in between these two, there is something which is called the jiva. The jiva, or the soul, or the subtle body, which is the one which takes up this aspect of a body. So he's trying to show about how, just like you have the, we all, for example, when we are tired of a body, when we are tired of, clothes, a certain clothes, or for that matter, if we are going from one activity to another, we change our clothes, we give up a lot of this. So too, with our bodies too, depending upon the need for a different body, then at that point in time, I decide that this body is not needed. Now, it can happen in 2 different ways. One is based on the prarabdha karmas of that body, which can happen naturally, it can be given off. Or it can be in also maybe the karma faladata, or Ishvara decides that it is time for you to pack up your things and move ahead to another body. So there are 2 different ways this can happen. And thing went off here. So in this sense, you have this aspect of this packing and unpacking that goes on, which depending upon the karmas which the body, the sukshma sharira has, which is trying to fulfill. And once it is fulfilled, that prarabdha karmas connected with that body is over, then it tries to find another body in order to exhaust the other set of karmas which is there within itself. So this is the aspect which we call as the rebirth, which happens, an aspect of Vihaya discarding the old body, and then having discarded, taking Navani Parani Grinati, he goes on to take on this newer aspect. newer clothes for moving ahead with his life. Now, all that might be good, but then somebody who's very rational, somebody who's very intellectual might say that, what is the proof? Why should I believe all this? There's nothing in here to tell me that I should do that. Now, this is a situation which we have, I guess, the very modern person who doesn't believe in philosophy or religion might say it. And of course, there are many other religions as well, which really doesn't believe in this rebirth concept. But then this can be looked at from three different ways. One of them is Shruti itself. Now, we are talking about an aspect which is, as I said earlier, it is not the Atma that is moving, and it is not the physical body also, because the physical body goes to the dust when somebody dies. It is the Sukshma Sharira, or the subtle body. And the subtle body is actually, it is an Indriya Gochara, and it is an Atindriya Vishaya indicating that it is beyond the senses. For example, how many of us can really see our mind? We know we have a mind. We know we have an intellect. We know we are thinking. But has anybody done any experiment in the lab to actually dissect and check where this mind is? There's a lot of money being put in there in this whole aspect of cognitive sciences, looking at where the mind is, where the intellect. And so far, nobody has found it. And I would bet to say that I think it would be hard to find this at all, because it is an Atindriya Vishaya. Now, this has been addressed by our rishis in our Shrutis. It is talked about in our Shrutis, like Upanishads. It is also talked about in some of the Smritis, Manusmriti. And in many of the Itihasas, Puranas, this is being discussed very well. So we have a background literature, as any good research scholar would do, where before you start the work, one would look back and look at what the work has been done. So we have literature references in our Upanishads which talks about it, especially Kathopanishad, for example, and some others as well, which gives you the Shruti Pramana for this aspect of rebirth. Again, somebody may say, but maybe this is just musings of rishis. How do we know that this is true? And this is being said by some of the German scholars in saying that these are just musings. But even if that be the case, there is logic that we can use to prove it. And when we say logic, we talk about, say, science, right? How does science handle any discoveries or any innovations, any inventions? The way science would deal with it is by a simple method, which is the law of cause and effect, correct? So it is by the law of cause and effect that it is done. Now, that being the case, if that is the aspect of it, then how do we handle this aspect here? So we have this yukti or logic, where in the Nyaya Shastra, they have come up with two things. One is the Akrita Abhyagama Dosha. Dosha indicating a fallacy. So these are the two fallacies that is there, which will need to be satisfied in this law of cause and effect in order to explain that there is no rebirth possible. Okay. So Akrita Abhyagama Dosha means that aspect where we see, where, one second, I just want to make sure that is where we see an effect, but how do we explain the cause itself? Okay, the results are really seen for us, but we are not we are not able to see the cause, or we are saying that there is no cause at all. What do we mean by this? We see in this world a variety of human beings, not just human beings, we see a variety of beings. And these beings are in essentially three different kind of divisions, you can say. So we have say human beings who are so different from each other in so many different ways. Some people are very born rich. This is again the aspect of being born. Some people are born in great families. Some people are not born in such great families. Some people are born with full perfect limbs and everything. Some people have a lot of deformities. Some people have, some people are high geniuses. Some people are not that, endowed with a lot of intelligence. So there are such a big variety in just about every possible way. Now, how can we explain these effects of people being so different from each other and not really having a cause to explain how these effects came out to be? That is the first fallacy of those theories which do not believe in rebirth. Obviously, there has to be some way to explain that once a person is born, that these changes were very quite evident. Just the nurturing at home by itself cannot explain this aspect of the differences in this aspect. So that is one, that is Akrita Abhyagama dosha. The second one, which is Krita Vipranasha dosha. Krita Vipranasha dosha is basically about the aspect that I see the cause, but I'm not able to explain how it is going to show up as an effect. What do we mean by that? Essentially, in this birth, if I do a lot of punya karmas, for example, how am I ever going to see the effect of it? To some extent, I can see the effect from day to day to day, but how can I see bigger aspects of the effect of everything that I've done in this life? So that is Krita Vipranasha dosha. That is another fallacy, which cannot be explained if I did not accept rebirth. So that is the second dosha. So two doshas, both of them based on law of cause and effect. The first one is I see the effects, which is Akrita Abhyagama dosha, but I'm not able to explain how the effects came about. What are really the causes? The second thing was I do a lot of things which can be a potential cause for effects later, but I have no way to infer that it is going to lead to an effect. So for both those reasons, from a logic perspective, we see that a rebirth phenomena has to be the only way we can explain it. Now, even if this is not sufficient, the third way is the aspect of an observation. Observation or experience, which is called as anubhuti here, which indicates that I do see the diversity. I see a huge diversity in this world. And how can I ever explain the diversity? There has to be a reason to explain the diversity. So those three reasons are why the rebirth concept has to be there in order to explain all these things. Certainly, none of these can withhold, I would say, the light of a microscope, or there is no microscope or a telescope or any instruments that have been developed in order to put it under and develop some data and things like that. The only way this can be done is to have that complete Shraddha and to develop our purity of our mind and intellect to be able to finally analyze this as much as we can. But I'm sure this will lead to the ultimate conclusion, what this shloka is trying to say. But if you have any questions or thoughts on this, please do send me a WhatsApp or anything, and then I'll be happy to see how we can answer this. So that having said, that's the shloka for, to explain the rebirth. The next shloka is to explain about what is can this Atma, can that ever be, can anything really destroy it in any way, fashion? Because this is another aspect of Atma which we need to think about. How robust is this Atma? Is this Atma can be considered like the way we think about ourselves? What are the elements that really cause havoc in our lives? If you think about it, the three major things that really cause the biggest havoc, and we have seen this in our own lives, are things which is the fires. Let's take the California fires, which last year caused a huge devastation, or of course, it's been doing it for a long time, but the last couple of years has been really bad. Even simple brush fires even can do some things like that. How about water? We see tsunamis, floods, which cause huge damage. And what about wind aspect? So the air aspect, tornadoes, all those things can also cause major damage. So that is what is being discussed in this shloka, on how that the nature of the self, it is indestructible by any of the elements. So I will chant this. Nainam chindanti shastrani. Nainam chindanti shastrani. Nainam dahati pavakaha. Nainam dahati pavakaha. Nachainam kledayantyaapaha. Nachainam kledayantyaapaha. Nashoshayati marutaha. Nashoshayati marutaha. So naenam shastrani chindanti, indicating a man-made instrument. So we talked about the three natural forces, but here the man-made is weapons. No atom bombs, no nuclear bombs, no any kind of material implements can ever destroy it. And neither can any of the three major things which I talked about. Na enam dahati pavakaha. Pavaka meaning fire, cannot burn it, dahati. Neither can apaha. Apaha, which is water, neither can it wet it out. And neither can wind, which is marutaha, that cannot even dry it out. So none of these things can, Atma can be destroyed by any of them. So I know the time is just 1 minute to 9:30 here. I will stop here. The next two shlokas are easy, so we'll be able to go through it rather quickly. And then after that, we will take up another major topic. And the questions that was asked was, why is life a battle? We will take it up next week. And what is reincarnation? I think that was addressed in the shlokas that we saw today for the Vasamsi Jirnani. Okay. So with that, I will finish here. And we will have our next session next week. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kasyat dukkha bhag bhavet. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Om purnamada purnamidam purnat purnamudachyate. Purnasya purnamadaya purnameva vashishyate. Om shanti shanti shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.
Thank you. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari
Hari
Om.
Om, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Hari Om, thank you so much. Yeah.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Thank you.
Avinash. Hari Om Suvarna.
Thank you.
Hari Om.
Thank
Hari Om
you.
Anita. Hari Om Madhuji. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om. Thank you, Sunitha ji.
Hari Om Pramila. Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Hari Om Das.
Thank you.
You're welcome.